This past weekend, King Khan went down in Paris, France, and I've already made a video going over the near-perfect top 8 on Monday. But, like so many majors these days, some of the most fascinating happenings of this tournament took place outside of the top 8. King Khan saw upset after upset after upset take place among some of their top seeds. And today, we'll be going over the biggest of these upsets. Just a reminder before we begin that if you want to support me monetarily, you can do so by using links to my Patreon or channel memberships in the description below. With that out of the way, we're going to be separating this video into 3 separate chunks. The biggest upsets in pools, the biggest upsets in top 128, and the biggest upsets in top 32. And so, without further delay, let's get started by taking a look at pools. Now, keep in mind that a lot of these upsets in pools were such big early upsets that the majority of them weren't streamed. In fact, none of them were streamed, so we're just gonna go ahead and get through these pretty quickly. The biggest upset to go down in pools was courtesy of Elfo, who is maybe the only Olimar player in the entire European Union. Elfo managed to pull an upset victory over Base Mage, the 10th seed. This upset was the largest in pools and the second largest all weekend, clocking in at an upset factor 8 victory for Elfo. Base Mage would later lose to Maze Beans in a Game 5 set to finish 33rd as the 10th seed. By the way, if you want to know what upset factor is, I've linked an article down in the description to help you out. The next upset was courtesy of German Luigi main Koshire, who defeated Zemmel in a close Game 5 set. Zemmel, the Cloud from the Netherlands, was the 45th seed, so this victory was good for an upset factor of 5. By the way, the clip of the upset that you're watching right now is actually from Koshire, who provided it to me. Link to their Twitter will be in the VODs section of the description. And then we come to DK Bill. DK Bill was a Canadian Steve main who entered the tournament as the 56th seed. However, early on in pools, DK Bill got upset by a Little Mac main named A8Z in a Game 5 set, for an upset factor of 5. Well, at least it can't get any worse though, right? Well, wrong, because DK Bill dropped into losers and immediately lost the next set against a Ganondorf main named FireXBoy97, which was an upset factor of 4. This was to place 257th as the 56th seed, losing to Little Mac and Ganondorf as Steve. And, yeah, I really do not want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. But I'm sure that you, the noble YouTube commenter, will be fair and magnanimous in your judgment. Anyways, our next upset is when the French Luigi main, The Witness, defeated French Inkling main, Magic, in a Game 5 set for an upset factor of 4. And lastly, for pools, we have French Steve main Yakadi defeating French Game & Watch main Virus 3-0 in an upset factor 4 victory. Now it's time for us to move on and look at upsets in top 128. This is where a lot of the big ones happened, and it's where we finally might have a VOD or two. The biggest upset of top 128 was also the biggest upset of the entire tournament, and it sadly was not streamed. Neo, the first seed of the tournament, lost a close Game 5 set to Neros, the French Pikachu, for an upset factor 9 victory. Although, I suppose, slight asterisk there. After all, Neo was the first seed because of his placement at Genesis X, with the highest placing finisher not already getting the first seed at King Khan. But even still, though you may argue that Neo wouldn't have been the first seed if not for this circumstance, this is still a phenomenal upset on the part of Neros, who just had a great run in general. And just for a moment, we're going to talk about these upsets out of order for a second, because the next thing I want to talk about is the unfortunate tale of SkyJ. SkyJ entered King Khan as the 8th seed, and in top 32, in the same round that Neo got upset, SkyJ would be upset. This time, it was by a Steve main named Entei from Germany. But here's the thing, Entei didn't play Steve for this set. Instead, Entei pulled out a secondary Min Min, which SkyJ has gone on record to say is one of the, if not the worst matchup for Incineroar. Using this superior matchup, Entei would 3-0 SkyJ dominantly to send the 8th seed down into losers. And once here, SkyJ would be upset again by another German player, this time being Longo, the German Rob. Longo defeated SkyJ 3-1, and SkyJ was eliminated at 33rd as the 8th seed, with both losses SkyJ suffered being upset factor 5s. However, I have to insert a footnote here. Both players, SkyJ and Longo, reported that the conditions of this set were terrible. This is because the tournament had ran overtime, and the venue was actively kicking people out. Both SkyJ and Longo reported insanely disruptive conditions while they were trying to play their set. And while SkyJ didn't want to blame that as the reason for this loss, Longo also went onto the record and said that because of this, it was impossible to feel very good about this upset victory. But these two didn't even have the worst of it. Artsniff versus Lancelot, which was in the same pool of top 128, actually had it way worse. Apparently, this set was quite literally stopped during the middle of a game, and both Lancelot and Artsniff were kicked out of the venue, expected to resume their set the next day. They did, and Lancelot would end up winning in a Game 5 set that spanned across 2 separate days. Now, I'm not sure how many people this happened to, but this even happening once is unacceptable for a major, and definitely is a sign that next year's KingCon will need better planning, a better schedule, or maybe better venue organizers that don't kick people out mid-set. Anyways, our next biggest upset of top 128 comes from an eventual top 8 finisher, Kid, the French Mii Brawler main who made history by becoming the first ever solo Mii Brawler player to top 8 a major. Kid defeated Mars, the 4th seed, in a Game 5 set for an upset factor 7 victory, the second largest of top 128 and the third largest of the tournament. Little did we know, Kid was just getting started, but we'll get back to that later. Our next upset also involves an eventual top 8 finisher, but this time they're not the one making the upset. Tarek, the German Greninja who was the 11th seed, lost in a Game 5 set to Pau, a German Pokemon trainer player. The set was a reverse 3-0 for Pau, which ended in one of the most insane Ivysaur moments I've ever seen at a major. And while Tarek did end up making top 8 through losers, this win was good for an upset factor of 6. Our next upset also involves another German player, this time Mukuro, the German Bowser and part of the Triforce of Bowser mains. Mukuro lost in losers to Kikipi, a French Diddy Kong player, 3-0 for an upset factor 5 loss. Our next upset involves a matchup that I never thought I'd get to talk about, Adult Link versus Young Link. You see, Vins is a French Link player and is probably the best Link in Europe, although I'm not sure who the competition would be there. Vins, however, was able to defeat Dutch Young Link main Supasemi 3-1 for an upset factor of 4. And last up for top 128, we're talking again about Pau, the German Pokemon trainer. Pau was able to get another upset victory, this time over Natoru, the best Pichu in the world. This set actually took place before the set against Tarek, but Pau defeated Natoru 3-1. For an upset factor of 4. I shall watch Pau's career with great interest, as we may be seeing the rise of a European PT to fill out a Triforce of mains with Quid, Atelier, and now perhaps Pau leading the charge. Now we're moving on to our last bit, the biggest upsets for top 32. These numbers are smaller, but you're almost guaranteed to recognize nearly every player I'm about to mention, so these upsets will likely mean a lot more to you than the ones we've covered so far. The biggest upset in top 32 belongs to Flo, the French Roy. And hey, do you remember when I made my top 8 recap yesterday and I told you that Flo DQ'd from winners? At the time, I wondered why that was. Well, a kind viewer told me that apparently Flo DQ'd from winners because Flo overslept that morning. And in the VOD of the upset that I'm playing, you can actually see Flo eating in between games, because Flo had literally just woken up and was still trying to eat breakfast. But if anything, that makes this upset immensely more impressive. That's because Flo managed to defeat the 4th seed, Mars, in a 3-1 set victory, a win that clocked in at an upset factor of 5. What a flex, am I right? Our next upset is courtesy of Maze Beans, the Steve player from the UK, who got an upset win over Siski. The Spanish Samus was the 5th seed coming into the event, and this Game 5 win was good for an upset factor 5 for Maze Beans. Our next upset is one that makes me slightly sad. You see, Apollo Kage entered KingCon as the number 6 seed, and by all accounts had a phenomenal tournament run. AK made it all the way to winners quarters without dropping a single game, getting good wins over Eco, Pew, and Pau in the process. But unfortunately, once there, AK lost to MkLeo 3-1. And lastly, got upset by the French Wolfmane Orion in a close Game 5 set and an upset factor 4 win for Orion. But hey, I suppose that meant that Wolf made top 8 at a major for the first time since Crown the Third, so, you know, you win some, you lose some, right? Our next upset sees us return to Kid, the Mii Brawler prodigy. You remember how Kid defeated Mars to make top 32, right? Well, once there, Kid was nowhere near finished. That's because after defeating Orion 3-1, Kid got another insane upset victory, defeating MK Big Boss in a close Game 5 set, in order to make top 8 through winner's side. If you want to see how this crazy Kid did during top 8 itself, you can check out yesterday's video for all of those juicy deets. Our next upset is from Itish, a French Palutena main who went on somewhat of a breakout run here at KingCon, placing 17th as the 47th seed. And the cherry on top of this great run was a Game 5 upset victory over the best player in Finland, Lancelot, good for an upset factor of 2. And last but certainly not least, we have MK Big Boss. I actually talked about MK Big Boss just a little bit ago when I mentioned that Kid defeated the biggest boss to make top 8. Well, let's go back just before that. Because in order to make it to winner's quarters, MK Big Boss got a great 3-0 upset victory over Siski, who I also mentioned a little bit ago, in a win that was good for an upset factor of 2. But why did I save this upset for last? Well, aside from the fact that it's tied with Itish Lancelot for the smallest upset I'm covering today, there's also one more important reason. You see, this upset is the only time that an intercontinental invader from North America, Japan, or anywhere that wasn't Europe got an upset win over a European player. Yes, you heard me right. I mean, think about it. Everything that we've covered throughout this entire video was European players getting big upsets over either other Europeans or upsetting intercontinental invaders, like when Nero's beat Neo, or when SkyJ got double eliminated by 2 Germans. This set, MK Big Boss vs Siski, is the only time a European got upset by someone invading from another continent. At least a major upset anyways. And that was the theme for a lot of KingCon. Even though Grand Finals might not have reflected it, Grands was kind of the outlier here. Everything else about KingCon was about Europe, through and through, and showing how strong of a region Europe has become. Let me illustrate it like this. Going into KingCon, only 2 of the top 8 seeds were European, Siski and Bloom Forever. But once KingCon happened, the only people in top 8 who weren't European were Neo, Spargo, and MkLeo, the first, second, and third seeds respectively. Everyone else was European. And Europe put in work at KingCon to prove that their region deserves to stand up alongside the giants of NA and Japan. European Smash is stronger now than it perhaps has ever been before. We are long gone from the days of Gluttony being the only remotely notable EU competitor. No. Instead, KingCon served as a landmark that the entire continent of Europe should be proud of, to show how far they've come on the world stage. That's going to be it for today's video. Before I go, shout out to my patrons Seth Laster, Frostgold233, Logan S, Persipalm, Wawa, Mr. Sinister, Happy Feet, Oceanman, and my Twitter patron Tiltus and Diamond Blaze. Additionally, shout out my YouTube members Zichiro Jr., Defective, Diarrhea, Fan of, Boston R, Iltis, SSBU, Kirby Fan, Nexus, Loco Soko, and my Twitter members Mike G, Wu-Chang Forever, and Stormtrooper. Lastly, extra special thanks to my tier 3 patrons Misty Bot, who says, in my opinion, Me Gunner is high tier, and Fat Blizzard, who says Zamba is the best player on the planet. If you want to support me using any of these methods, links are in the description below. Also, I want to give one last sincere thanks to Let Me Fly for their continued support of my channel. Link to their Twitter page is in the description below. Don't miss tomorrow's upload, but until then, I've been RisterMice, and thank you all so very much for watching.